6:03, bring this meeting of the Fernbluff Municipal Utility District Board of Directors to order. All directors are present. Director Barnes, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Since our landscaper's here, I'm going to jump into the front of the line, and then we'll do citizens communications right after.
Okay.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Nice to see you all. Not too much to go over for this month, but we have been working pretty extensively on the community center, trying to get it back to former glory after the winter weather. All the beds have been repopulated. We top dressed the sod out there, and it's really paying dividends with all this rain. So I feel really good about the way the community center is looking. We've got some new pots and some new annual color out there, so everything looks really good here. All of the pre-emergent for the spring has been applied. I will be doing an early summer fertilization here at the end of this week or the beginning of next week. Additional post-emergent applications are needed in some areas. Sprayed once, but we're going to go ahead and spray some post-emergent down again in some areas. The weeds have been particularly bad this year. Aerations have been completed on all the sports fields, and again, with all the rain, that's really paying dividends as well. And then the tree project along Olson Meadows, we've started that. We hope to have all the holes dug by the end of this week. We are taping all of those off with caution tape and T-posts while we dig them, just for safety reasons. And then we're going to go ahead and start working on the irrigation, getting irrigation to all of those, and hopefully be able to start installing trees by next week or the week after. So that's moving right along. And then speaking of trees, I know a lot of people are probably concerned about the trees that they're seeing that are leaving out a little funny here in the community and also in their own homes. It's definitely on our radar. We're taking a very patient approach to that, especially with the oak trees. I think that we're not going to be willing to make a determination on some of these trees until next spring and see how they leaf out. But I do expect to lose some. I think that's just a given. I just drove down to the coast this weekend for Mother's Day and was noticing out in the countryside all the way down that everything I'm seeing up here, I saw all the way down to the coast. Hopefully they will bounce back, but I do anticipate losing some oak trees in the community. It's unfortunate. I'm keeping up with Neil Sperry. He's working with the Texas A&M Forestry Service, and they're doing a study on the oak trees in Texas, but it's a very serious deal. I think we're statewide going to lose a lot of oak trees. But I'm definitely keeping in contact with people that I know, arborists, and trying to follow best practices with that. So we'll just have to kind of take a wait and see approach on some of these trees. And then this month, I also have a proposal for your consideration that you'll find in your packets that is coming in and repopulating some of the plants that we lost through the parks due to the winter weather this year. If you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer those. But that's really, it's really about all I have. I think the biggest thing is just the trees. Probably going to start hearing some people asking about those, and so I think the overall answer there is patience. We're going to practice patience.
I've got a question. I know yesterday we closed down Olson Meadows parking lots there at the pavilion, both parking lots.
Yeah.
Williams County's down there. They're
Yep.
working on the driveway, the new driveways, the new parking lot, and everything. Is that causing you guys any issues?
No, we're using the far parking area, and then the one right by the tennis courts, and kind of working our way back towards the pavilion and everything. And so when we get that big tree delivery, we will stage half the trees on that end and half the trees over there, load them up with our machine onto the trailer, drive them around, put them down next to there. And so I think we're going to be able to work around all of that.
if you need us to, the little bitty parking lot that's right there by Brush Creek
Oh,
Mud, if y'all need that at a certain time, let me know, and we can always, you know,
Block it.
temporarily close it down.
Yeah,
for
that
you
might be
guys have
very,
access.
that might be very helpful when we actually get the tree delivery.
Let me
and some of
know.
that kind of stuff, and, you know, a lot of that, we're amending soil and doing, you know, all that kind of stuff with those tree holes, so, that could be potentially very beneficial to us, so, if I need that, I will let you know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jack, yeah.
So these trees will go on the trail or somewhere else?
Yeah, they're going along the trail.
Along the trail.
Yeah, exactly, and the whole point is to, you know, inevitably, we're gonna start losing those Bradford pears. And so we're going ahead and putting trees in now, good hardwood trees that are gonna last a lot longer than the original Bradford pears that were placed there, so that they can go ahead and get up and start getting some height to them and some caliper to them, so that, you know, eventually when we are gonna start taking those out, we can point to those and say, we've mitigated the, you know, problem of, we're not just removing trees, we've planted these trees that are longer lived, that are better for the environment than the ornamental pear trees, so.
Cool. Okay. And the construction there isn't gonna affect you at all? So-
No, all of that is, from the trail system, over towards the road, everything they're doing over there, yeah, so we're trying to stay very far away from them.
Smart.
Yeah, yeah, cause they're tearing it up.
They're tearing it up, they're doing a very good job.
They are, yeah, I noticed, they've got the kind of the borders of the driveway, board, and, I think it's gonna be a real improvement.
I think it's gonna help a lot having the turn lane there
Yeah.
for you guys too.
Yeah, for sure, it's always scary coming in and out of there with big trailers and stuff
Oh,
like
yeah.
that, yeah.
Jack, I've got a question for you.
Yes,
On
sir.
your proposal, each of the items A through J, it has, you know, removed dead plant material and repaired drip irrigation as needed. Are all the irrigation sites listed here damaged or need?
No, it's just, you know, if there's areas where we're, putting a grouping of plants, we just wanna make sure we're adding drip in there, so that all the plants have coverage.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not, you know, we may well find some damage, and for sure, my guys may damage some things while they're planting stuff, so it's going in, fixing anything we damage, and then really just making sure that we've got 100% coverage with drip for the new plants that we place in, because we might have a spot, we're not necessarily going in and putting a plant right exactly where there was one.
Okay.
But me and Brian will lay those out, which looks best, and make sure that then we are adding drip into all those areas to make sure that we have 100% coverage with the drip.
Okay, and then for removing the dead plant material, looks like some of these are probably shrubs, some of these sites?
Yeah.
Any trees, or is this all plants? or
I
shrubs?
think the only tree right now is a possum haw holly on the backside of the butterfly garden. Any tree, we're gonna wait and see on that, and, you know, we'll start communicating that with you all in the fall about what we think is gonna happen, and then I don't think we're ready to make a determination of that until next
On the
spring,
trees, okay.
until everything leaves out, and we're just gonna kinda see what's gonna happen there, and then, you know, we'll have to decide what we wanna do as far as that goes, so. I'm hopeful, but I definitely think we're gonna lose some of those trees that I'm seeing. I've talked to other people who are in the industry, and, you know, it's very unusual for these oak trees to be hanging on to their brown leaves as long as they have, even though they're pushing out some new growth, from the trunks, so, yeah.
It's a
we're
sign
just gonna-
something's wrong with them.
Yeah, they're definitely stressed and they're struggling, they're trying to survive, but it could be their last gasp, so.
Fair enough.
Okay, any other questions? All right,
All right.
well, we're working hard, trying to get everything back to the way it was before the storm, so, we always thank you, and, if anything comes up, just let me know.
All right.
Thank you, the community center looks fabulous.
You're very welcome.
I
Yeah.
mean, we did replace the pots outside. We had those old clay pots that were
They
just
were starting to
crumbling,
break.
and we did these square, a little more modern look. Oh, it looks so good.
Yeah, it looks a lot better, and
It
those old
really
pots were
does.
starting to break every time we touch them and move them
Oh,
around,
I
we
know.
try to do the
They-
annuals
it
and
was
stuff,
like,
so.
don't get too close to that because it's
Yeah.
falling apart.
So, okay, well, thank y'all,
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
very much, sir.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. All right, let's do citizens communications next. I have two speakers signed up to go, so, Mr. Sean, would you mind going first?
Sure.
Thank you.
Just before you do that, just want to let the board know that we're experiencing some audio recording issues
Okay,
So Suzanne, if you don't
I
mind
got it.
taking some better notes,
okay.
just say, I just.
Didn't
Thank you for bringing that to our
I'm not
attention.
sure what's going on with the audio, but
Okay.
we can hear it out here, we just.
And I've adjusted my hearing aids because these acoustics in these rooms are horrible for people with hearing deficits, so it's really bad, so. My name's Trina Deshawn, I live at 834 Glen Canyon. It's got a couple things to say. So there's a hailstorm, I'm sure we're all aware of. I have a new truck. That hailstorm cost me some damage to my truck. I got several dents in the truck. It's about $500 to get repaired. After the hailstorm, I purchased a car cover to keep from in the future any hail damage. And I bought that. It was delivered on the 22nd. Placed it on my vehicle on the 24th. Received a violation notice on the 28th. Funny thing is, when I walked out my door on the 28th, I looked to my right, and there was a gentleman down there with the car cover on his. I went down there promptly and asked him if he received a violation. He did not. There was another person on Priest River who also had a car cover. Asked them if they received a violation. They did not. I've also talked to them today about it. Neither one of them have received a violation to date. So I'm going to take that as a personal discriminatory thing for me. Y'all are targeting me because you don't like what I'm saying about whatever's going on. I'm in a very, my house is in a very, it's right on the corner. It's right on 2 streets. So I know a lot of y'all know where I live. It's not a big secret. But if you're gonna do this, those have to be applied across the board to everybody. I'm noting every time it is not. Every month I'm getting all the violations that occur, and I'm noting it. I don't know if it's just me personally. I don't know if it has something to do about my multicultural race I am, but I can assure you that it will come up. Literally, I had that on my car for 3 days before I got a violation on it. So I'm a little hesitant about that. So especially when we already have an issue with the legitimacy of the ACC and what it entails. Second thing is, in the first quarter of this year, I've had 2 ACC approval requests that were sent to the ACC board. My issue with this board and its appointees sent to Fernbluff ACC approval 2 members that were not even, this was in February, before those members were even elected or nominated or appointed or whatever you want to say they were. They were sent those to approve or deny. They weren't even part of the board yet or the committee yet. So they were both sent. 7 approval requests was sent to the committee, which means the GM of the MUD received that request and forwarded it to both Dave Gray and Marilyn Listander, who were not on the committee at that time. The request had to do with installing a 12 to 15 foot above ground pool in the backyard. There was some discussion about it, back and forth, there were some emails. But Jessica Stemko made a statement in one of those responses after the resident received approval. Her response was, "This would be an example of how Fernbluff neighborhood covenants are less restricted now than HOA that permits above ground pools." First of all, we're not HOA. Second of all, it took me 5 minutes to go on the phone and call Andrew, who is the president of the Brushy Creek HOA. And he said they didn't require approval. All they had to do was send in an approval for the ACC, and they could have above ground pools too. So my issue is, before y'all send out a blanket statement about things, you really need it. Literally, it took me 5 minutes to do that. The problem is, your residents believe what you say. Whatever this board says is what they believe. And it doesn't take that much to talk to somebody, call somebody and say, hey, what exactly do y'all require? And I'm gonna do this until y'all understand what's going on. I'm not letting up. Only because that's what y'all are here for. Okay? Jessica, I don't know what your issue is. We're not a HOA. Fernbluff is not a HOA. We don't want to be a HOA. We never were a HOA. We had a voluntary HOA. It didn't work out. We are not a HOA. So, you know, again, Andrew Johnson's the president over there. He said, nope, all they got to do is file just like we do, go ask the ACC if it's permittable. They say yes, and it's all good to go. So do not make blanket statements unless you're absolutely sure. You know why? It blows this entire board's credibility. No one's going to believe anything you say. So make sure what you're saying is accurate. If that's not. And like I said, that was made in February of this year. So, and like I said, in the last quarter, January, February, March, there was two ACC requests. One was for a pool, one was for somebody trying to put French doors in the back of his house.
You're over on time. Can you wrap up, please?
Of course, George, I can.
Thank you.
So, anyway, the residents of Fernbluff are misinformed about issues, and we can't trust the board. So,
Thank you, Mr. Sung. Next up is Mr. Yorm Gavan.
Hello, everybody. I have a quick question. Zach, maybe you'll be able to help with it. I've had people contact me on Facebook, and they said that one of the things that, and George, you and I spoke about that, it's really difficult for them about coming and I have people online now because I'm streaming it on YouTube, but they said they never have a chance to give comments. So I was reading, and again, Zach, I don't know if this is something you wrote. It says that citizen communication limited to 2 minutes per speaker will be welcome at the beginning of discussion of each agenda item. So I think this is actually a good idea because at the beginning of each agenda item, if you can just say, hey, we're going to talk about ABC. If anybody has some comments, that will allow people to participate more. Because a lot of people say, I don't like coming to this, and I don't like because I'm just sitting there and I have, except for the first 2 minutes, I can't, like, I had somebody tell me, when we were talking about vaccination, her brother actually was one of the people organizing vaccination in Texas, and she was like, I wanted to say something, but, you know, she had no opportunity. So, George, for you, and Zach, I'm asking you because maybe legally there's something here that I'm not aware of, that it's not, you can't do it, but I highly suggest, George, if we can open it to citizen communication at the beginning of each agenda. I think it's gonna make people a lot more involved, and you're also gonna get really good feedback, I think. That's it, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gavan. Next item on the agenda, item number 5, items to be removed from the consent agenda. Do we have any?
I do not.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda by Director Tyber,
Second.
second by Director Smith. All in favor? All right, motion carries 5-0. Consent agenda is passed. Item number 7, old business, status of completion of cybersecurity training. I understand 2 or 3 people have completed so far? 2. All right, so me and the other 2 need to get on it. It's due next month, right?
Kevin gets 100%.
It's due next month?
Yes, please.
All right, so we need to get it done by the next meeting, everybody.
If y'all need a copy of it, I printed some out.
Of the
You're
certification?
done? You're done.
I have my certification by my computer, I just haven't done it.
Oh, okay.
You completed yours?
Mr. President, respectfully,
Okay, I don't know that I have.
just like to remind the board that we have a lot of other districts who are also a little bit behind on their certification. And Suzanne has to go through a process to get those recorded, so if we could get those prior to the next meeting, that would be
Wise
fantastic.
of you to say that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All the employees are done.
Oh, excellent, that's good news,
They are.
okay, great, thank you. All right, agenda item number 9, Williamson County Road and Bridge. Do we do that now, or do we wanna do that during, GM and?
Just do it during
later?
PM.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's defer on that. Item number, let's see, well, that's next anyway. 10B, General Manager, Maintenance and Operation Report.
My report is in the packet, hold on one second. The proposal for Texas Lawn and Garden is there. That is should be the last of the storm damage that we have, other than, as Jack explained, the trees. We are going to take a very patient, view of this. So the proposal is there. You guys wanna take action on it. Road and Bridge. Perryman project is moving along at quite a clip. If y'all been down there, you see, major construction. It got quite scary last week with the number of people trying to go around construction equipment, blocking in loaders, just to get to the trails. So with discussion with our staff, with the road crew down there, we have closed those 2 parking lots nearest to the pavilion there at Olson Meadows. That's for everybody's safety. Don't know how long it will be. As I said, they're moving it along at quite a clip, but the restrooms at the pavilion are still not operational. That restroom took the biggest hit. So we're still waiting for some parts to come in, and we had several pipe breaks. The way that pavilion was built many years ago, it's all up in the cinder blocks, and it's a challenge. So it kind of works out. There's no restroom there, we're not renting the park, and those 2 parking lots are closed.
Do we know how long they'll be closed? I mean, they're working a pretty good clip, but.
They are, and they know. Williamson County has been very, very
Yeah,
good.
they don't want
have-
to close it, I know.
They've tried their best to keep everything open,
Right.
but with what's going on the actual road, with what is going on with our parking lots, they are in the throes of combining those 2 parking lots right now and finishing that culvert.
Right.
So, for their workflow, and really for us, we want it done right. We don't want anybody cutting corners because trying to keep the parking lots open as much as possible. I don't think it will be more than a few weeks. I really don't. They know, the Parks Department knows, and the Road and Bridge Department knows. They're probably getting calls, of complaints as well. I'm getting calls with complaints.
About
that
parking
the
lots
parking
being
lots, most of them are not our residents, but that is a place that everybody around here comes and parks to get on the trails. So,
And the far one is still open though, right?
the far one, yes, the small one that's closest
Yeah,
to
there's like
Brushy
10
Creek's
spots.
pool, that one's still open. That's the one that I was telling Jack that we can, shut down temporarily as they try to make deliveries. The far one down at the baseball fields is still open.
Okay.
We knew
No, I
this
mean,
was
it is
coming.
what it is, yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's-
we knew this was coming. It unfortunately, it's happening right now, with spring, the weather's really nice. But the other good part of that, we've had a lot of rain. So, people haven't been in the parks quite as much. But I really think they're going to hurry this along.
Okay.
I don't have anything else unless y'all have some questions for me.
No, I don't have any more questions for you. Anyone else? Hector Operations, do we have anything new?
Yeah, got a few items for you. I'm happy to inform the board that this afternoon I submitted the certification for the American Water Infrastructure Act Risk Resilience Assessment. That's a big deal. It's due by June 30th. It's in today, so that gives me an extra 45 days to work on their template of the emergency management plan. So I'm already halfway through that, so hopefully next month or month after I'll be completely done with that, and we'll be getting EPA out of our hair. So big deal.
How often do we have to certify on that?
Every 5 years. Every 5 years. So meaning you have to go back, revisit it, and I'm thinking we'll revisit every year on the anniversary, just to make sure there's no changes or anything like that. So, that was a big deal. So
Took a lot of time and effort.
big weight off my chest. So we'll get there. Olson Meadows Park, all this construction, the water line that relocated went by quickly. No issues, no problems. Even their utility crews are pretty darn good, so I was real happy with that one.
Yeah, just so you know, I think the residents really appreciated the case of water you provided too, which was, you know, I mean, we were in California when my daughter was like, oh, I got drinking water while they're doing this. Of course, you were so quick.
You know, it was a just in case kind of thing, so.
We didn't know.
But the residents do appreciate that gesture.
You know, we tried to take care of our folks, so that worked out pretty good. Let me see, I've got that. CCR, I think I mentioned to the board last month that I was gonna try to do the CCR first, but I saw an opportunity to finish the risk resilience, so I did it. Hopefully CCR will get it done with the May billing instead of waiting till the June billing. Usually in June, we're cutting it pretty close, so we're just gonna move it up a month and go from there. So we just try to not have any stress with any kind of state or federal regulations.
Remind me what CCR is.
Consumer Confidence Report, that's the annual report of how the water system, water quality is.
Yeah,
I
I know the
Yeah.
acronyms, there's too many of them, there's just too
I
many
just
of
couldn't
them.
remember what that one was, thank you.
Yeah.
And last thing, because of the freeze, we had some minor issues at the pump station, so took the liberty to go ahead and price out some generators. Big generator for the pump station, a smaller generator for the water tower. Because of supply chain issues, blah, blah, I mean, just, you know, everything COVID related, I mean, the price tag on those came out really expensive. You know, we're at a point where, you know, we did good during this freeze. So it's not an urgent thing that we, you know, have to bring it to the board, you know, this month, next month, or whatever. So I believe, you know, probably toward the end of the year, there'll be some better opportunities to, you know, to get some generators at a better price and a better delivery time. So we're just gonna go ahead and pause on that. Just wanna let the board know that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. If we get a better
We'll-
price point, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, bang for the buck. I just, you know, yeah, it seems like anywhere we go now, I mean, lumber, just
Lumber's
PVC,
stupid,
I mean,
dude.
just anything is just really hard to get. And,
What is the fuel source of those generators? Is it diesel or?
Diesel.
Diesel?
Mhm. Yeah.
Just wanted to-
Yeah, we could do propane, but then again, we'd have to, you know, add a propane tank to it and, or natural gas or whatever. And diesel's just so much easier to handle.
Well, would you have a storage tank for diesel too, as a backup? Okay.
Yeah, and typically those generators will come with either 500-gallon tanks or 1,000-gallon tanks.
Oh, God.
So,
That's a lot.
yeah, it's a lot. But they, you know, they expend a
They
lot of
burn it,
fuel
yeah.
trying to keep big motors going, so. But that's about all I have. Like I said, I mean, praise God, we're doing okay with operations and we're hanging in there, so. Far so good.
One more question on the fuel tank and that stuff for the generator. How long are they supposed to last before you gotta refuel them or wait for the power to come back on?
Well,
Depends on-
they get tested every month, so they would automatically start themselves. You know, with some fuel preservatives in there, they would last, you know, 6 months to a year.
No, but I mean, if you have to turn them on, how
Oh.
much continuous power?
Oh.
I'm sorry, I didn't phrase it
I'm
right.
sorry. Yeah, depending on the size of the tank, I mean, you could probably do a day or two, and the load, of course. So, yeah, I wouldn't.
Okay, so you
I
shouldn't
wouldn't estimate
count
any
on
more than 24 hours.
more than 24 hours.
So, yeah, and hopefully, if we have any type of emergency, that can last more than 24 hours. But the possibility is always there. So.
Okay.
If you remember what the city of Round Rock went through in this last, that was one of their challenges, is that they were able to get generators there, but getting the diesel, because the gas stations were closed down, it just, so having our own source for, you know, we would wanna try to figure out a way to have 48 hours, because Oak Brook would be a challenge without our pumps. So.
All right. Thank y'all.
Good job.
Let's see. What is the status on the community center? We're starting to take rentals now?
We have some at the end of this month. I think we have a couple in June. So yeah, people are,
But not at 100% or at 100%?
no, and people are being really understanding. No one's wanting to have very large parties. They're just, you know, but they are wanting to do the graduation, the baby showers and such, so
And
yeah.
for our staff, do they feel reasonably safe? Either they've been vaccinated or are they okay with
Yeah,
whatever they're doing?
I
even if
think
it
they've
be
been,
during and after?
well, except for Cindy. We don't know what to do about her, but we'll talk about that at another time. No, they're all doing fine. I got my first, vaccine last week. I'll get my second. I'm encouraging everyone, you know, get it if they want, not mandatory, you know, whatever. But I don't, even our field staff have not gotten the vaccine. Hector always says.
That's
well,
fine, I don't need to know that
Yeah.
thing. I just want people, if they have an issue.
Tony's
to
good,
be talking
Olga's
to you.
good,
Okay, if
Because
everyone.
they're the ones that will be working the
Yeah,
events.
because we're gonna have to get back to normal at some point.
That's
so
exactly right.
As long as
They're
everyone
fine.
understands that and they're okay with how things are going.
They're fine, yeah. Hector says that he's worked in sewer for how many years, and so
30
he's
plus
got
years.
natural
Just
immunity to
impervious.
everything, so yeah, probably true.
Name it, I've seen it.
Oh, please don't name it, not tonight. No, mm-mm, no.
All right, budget committee, Director Barnes, we have anything?
Nothing really to report on budget, but, there is, and, maybe Mr. Evans can explain a little bit further. So, one of the things that, that a couple of, community members have reached out about was, the possibility about a homestead exemption. And so, Mr. Evans wrote a resolution to adopt a homestead exemption from taxation, and so, that's really the only thing, so.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. President, Directors. There's not a whole lot to the process, other than what you see in front of you as far as the resolution is concerned. Y'all are not required, but you do have the option of adopting an ad valorem exemption that's permitted under the tax code, the same place that cities and other taxing entities are granted authority. This is really just kind of a placeholder, because my understanding is that, excuse me, is that the budget committee was wanting to discuss this possibility as y'all move towards budget and tax setting season. And so this is really just kind of an example for y'all to look at, and whenever you do meet to kind of around the numbers vary by district. Again, not all districts have an exemption, some do, some don't. It's purely within the discretion of the board to decide. The one big caveat when you're adopting these is if you want it to apply for the upcoming tax year, it has to be adopted by July 1st. And obviously budget and tax season doesn't kick off in earnest until, midsummer. So the odds are, unless the board wants to act on this next month, the odds are high that this would be something that y'all would enact. Suzanne will correct me if I'm wrong, but thereafter, if y'all were to adopt it, it would actually go into effect for what would be the 2022 tax year.
2021 tax year.
Thank you. I'm always a year ahead or a year behind. So, so I mean, that's really all there is to it. Again, that number is we just plug that in there. It's totally up to the board to decide if y'all like that or if you don't. And Suzanne will always have a little bit more information on this.
Well, I'm just letting you know that you already do have the over 65 exemption in place and disabled exemption in place. The district does. So if you approve this, you can change that amount, or you can and you can add a general homestead exemption.
Okay.
So, and I believe that one of the things that, that I had asked Janie to do was to actually come up with some numbers as far as, because we were talking about a couple different numbers in place of that $15,000, and to see what it would actually do to our revenue and what it would do to our budget. And so that is something that, Mr. President, you and I can get together and look at those numbers and,
Yeah, I would like to do that. I'd rather know what the financial impact would be if we do this before we pass something. I also like to wait, when does the legislative session end? Do you?
The 31st of this month.
Okay, cause I wouldn't wanna do anything until session's over either, cause I just don't know what they'll send through at the end of the session that's gonna impact us.
I've already started the analysis and started with how many, none of this will be exact because you can only go with the information that you have. But as an example, we have 270 homes in the district that are rental. They wouldn't be entitled to a homestead exemption. So taking those numbers, I've requested some information from Williamson County Tax Office and such, but we've already started that process. And as you said, like the 5, 15, 20, just see what that would do to our tax revenue and overall budget. And as Suzanne said, we already have it's actually a 65 and disabled or disabled.
Right.
So we have 15.
That's already enacted.
Yeah, and we're one of the few MUDs in the Williamson County area that actually offer that exemption. I don't know of any MUD that has a homestead exemption in Williamson County. If they do, it would have been really recent. But I don't have any that have a homestead exemption. So we would be one of the first. We did talk about this years ago. I don't really remember, the result of it all. And it may have been when we did the 65 and the disabled. But Blockhouse has the same type of exemptions that we have. They're similar to our size. Meadows of Chandler Creek have a $5,000 65 and disabled. But there aren't very many MUDs that have it, so we could be a trailblazer.
Whenever I was doing my research, there really aren't very many MUDs across the state that
No.
do it. I mean, I found some in Houston and some Dallas area, but, yeah, we would be a trailblazer if we did that. So,
It all depends on the management of the MUD and how they keep the budget, and how it affects the budget, right? Like you said, so understanding if it's gonna affect us in terms of, the long term and, needs,
Right.
provisions and et cetera, that we need to maintain, will we be able to keep in the green, right?
Right. And the good thing is we have the MUD, the board has the capability of raising, lowering it, changing it every year. Just because you pass it, say at $5,000, that doesn't mean it's there forever. You can raise it.
It can never go away completely.
It can
once
never
you
go away
once
completely,
you
but if
adopt
you
it.
wanted to
change
ooch
the
it up,
You can
then,
change the amount.
exactly. So that may be something you may wanna think about is starting, at one level and then coming up with a plan to change it over, a 5-year period or something like that.
Start low and move high.
Yeah.
If it
Well,
was-
and our appraised values have come in, and, they're good, I mean, we all know what's going on. Makes me concerned, are we going to hit a point like in 2008, and we started going backwards?
We did.
I don't think we know, but,
And that's the kind of situation, at some point the pendulum will swing, and I wanna make sure we're okay, with whatever we do, that we'll be able to survive. We have operations in-house now, we don't hire, a lot of outside consultants like we used to manage our stuff, we do it in-house, so we need to have the ability to make it happen
Yeah.
with what we have on hand.
So I really need to look at this either 5, 10 years down the road,
Right.
to try and figure out what the effect is gonna be.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of variables in there, including
right.
home values and everything like that, but.
And how many people would take advantage of the homestead? I can only assume that if we have 1,876 homes, 270 of them are leased or rented, the rest would possibly take advantage of the homestead. So I'm going to be very conservative as we do this whole analysis and
Yes.
assume everyone will take advantage of it, Yeah.
And do we have any way of knowing, on a, not granular, but on a macro level, how many people take advantage of the 65 and over or
That's,
disabled number?
that is the question that I've asked from Williamson County, cause I don't
Okay.
have access to that information. And quite frankly, I mean.
I mean, that would be helpful to me, I would think.
Exactly. Just to put it in perspective, as you guys are thinking about this over the next couple of months, it's not a large amount. I mean, even if we went as high as $15,000, all of a sudden, that's depending on the appraised value of the home, but if you assume a $350,000 appraisal, which is sort of medium, well, it was medium, but that's like $41 a year. Now, that is nothing to sneeze about, that's for, an individual homeowner. And of course, it's gonna be higher if your appraised value is higher. Okay,
Good.
But on the flip side, how does that affect our budget?
that's exactly right,
So
and
that's
that's what
the key
we're
that we
obligated
need
to make sure that we take care of.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I should have that finished by the end of the month, Kevin.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Gene.
So I got one more question for the budget committee. I mean, I saw the numbers that Jack presented on.
Oh, yeah, we need to deal with
Does
that.
that fit within the budget, the current budget?
Yes, and that was the good thing that we did last year, is we put a little bit extra in our budget. We didn't know what COVID was gonna cost the district. So, we've mitigated that as best we can. There have been extra expenses, but no one budgeted for an Arctic blast. But we're fine on budget, okay? Moving forward, perhaps we need to budget for that every year. Just kidding. It's Texas, it's not gonna happen again for 50 years. Maybe.
So it's predictions.
Yeah, I know.
Blackouts in August, though, you never know.
Well, I mean, with that in mind, I clearly think we need that work done. So, but I also noticed that Olson Meadows isn't in there. Is that because it was covered at the last meeting like this?
Say that again.
Oh, I noticed that Olson Meadows, was not in that proposal.
No, we've just sort of decided to leave Olson alone until the construction crew is gone, because, other than the trees, because this is the perfect time of year to be putting those in right now. We're a little bit late, but obviously the weather affected us this year. But Olson is going to need some work, A, because of construction, and just B, from the freeze, so we just left Olson alone till the
Okay.
construction is
That
done.
answers the
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
So, I don't know if it's time to motion that we accept that, proposal, or?
I mean, I'm not gonna vote for it now. You can make a motion if you wanna see if you get a second, but I'd rather wait and do some analysis first.
Okay.
Are you talking about the resolution, or are you talking about the?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about the resolution.
Landscape.
Are you talking about
I'm
landscape?
talking about landscape.
I'm sorry, I was not talking about landscape.
I didn't
Beg your
know
pardon.
either.
Beg your pardon.
I mean, if it's time, I think, if it's needed, which it sounds like it is, and, these guys have been treating us well, so, I think it might be time to just get this thing kicked off and let them do what they need to do, to beautify our parks.
Okay. You wanna make a motion on it then?
So, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the proposal for landscaping as presented by Jack and is in the package.
All right, motion by Director Smith. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Director Barnes. Any further discussion? Since there's a lot of dead plant material, it's probably a good idea to do it, to get stuff replaced. And the trees are gonna come later, and there's gonna be some, so we'll have to do that when it's.
Yeah. I can't believe that it affected Oaks the way it did. It's
Yeah, I
astounding to me.
All right, let's vote. All in favor of Director Smith's motion? All right, it's unanimous. Motion carries. So call Jack and tell him to get it done.
I will do that.
All right, roads committee, we already talked about roads. I don't think we need to talk any more about that.
I'll just share that,
Oh, okay, good.
that
Yeah.
it's expected the traffic light at Great Oaks and
Oh, yeah.
Perryman will go in June. At the bridge,
Oh, okay.
okay?
Wow. So they're gonna put a light there first before they do a bridge?
No, this is, the traffic signals on O'Connor and Morgan Hill.
Oh,
That's where you're
oh,
talking
sorry.
about. Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that whole project's been at a standstill. There was quite a lot of,
Yeah. More to come.
a lot
That's
of
what-
work to get that contractor pushed along, but that's exactly right, we just found out from Commissioner Cook it should be all installed, by June.
Yeah,
By June, okay.
Yeah.
They got the poles all laid out in Brushy Creek Park now, so they actually got the material,
Exactly,
so.
that's what they kept saying they didn't have, was the
All right, Parks and Rec, Director Tyler, do we have anything for Parks and Rec?
No, I'm glad that we approved the motion to, accept that $24,700, proposal from our legislator. That will remove and replace all the damaged areas in our parks, and, that'll be excellent. Other than that, Virginia and landscaper have all, mentioned quite a few things going on with our parks, so I really don't have anything additional to go into that.
All right, very good.
I got a question. In the minutes from the last meeting, they talked about, Jack giving us a newsletter or something on how to, how to take care of plants. Did he ever?
same. We did this spring,
It was in
Yeah,
the, it was in the board
meeting.
packet itself.
Oh,
we
was
did
it
a whole
hard
spring
copy?
newsletter.
It was in
Okay, it's not
Look
in
in your
this,
packet,
in this month's packet. or
Last month's
last
packet.
month's packet.
I guess I missed that. Okay. Is that something that we can use on our website or not?
We can, yeah, I can do that, let's
I
see.
think it would be nice to be.
We share it on Facebook, just so you know. We shared it on Facebook.
All right, District Community Center Committee, do we have anything for that? No? Deed-restriction committee, anything right now?
We did talk to, we gave notice to Connect Management. We were disappointed that they would not let us out of the contract right away. They're holding us to 90-day. And Sage Management will start in August.
August one.
And we're hoping that we'll see an improvement in our deed enforcement.
Alright, my understanding of the new rules on
Excuse me, this is a meeting of the Board of Directors, the board can speak, that citizens communications already happened, okay? This is
Oh, I
time for,
understand you
this is
just
time
said-
for us to do the business of the district, which we're almost done.
But you can
All
talk
right,
about whatever
security
agenda item
committee,
you want,
Director
right?
Tyler, there's
Am
gonna
I
be
wrong?
silence out there, or I'm gonna call a deputy. You understand me?
You're gonna call a deputy on what?
Yes, I will. I will have you removed from the premises. Do you need to leave?
But-
If you cannot, shut your mouth. You're
Don't-
gonna need to leave right
Don't-
now.
Shut my mouth? I thought it said that you could talk about an agenda
Citizens
item
communication is
before the
over.
agenda.
Citizen communication is over. Director Tyler, do you have anything for security?
Yes, I have one item to mention, and that's that we had 77 hours of deputy patrol in the month of April in all of our parks and all of our neighborhoods. And the patrol hours, interestingly enough, the patrol hours range from 5 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. So we had busy patrols throughout the month, throughout the entire time of the day. All excellent.
Very good. Communications committee, do we have anything, Director Smith?
No, I just wanted to get that newsletter posted, after I heard about it, so that was all I had.
Okay, very good.
So it sounds like it's gonna happen.
Attorney report, legislative update, what do you have for us? Mr. Attorney?
Yes, Mr. President, Directors, we just have a brief memorandum, I won't read it to you, but I'll just briefly kind of go over the bills that we did cover. Just keep in mind, as stated earlier, the legislative session ends, May 31st, so it's rapidly approaching. It's a crazy time of year down there, during any session, but, due to COVID, due to the winter storm, the legislature was preoccupied this session, to say the least. And so it's been somewhat abnormal in that we're not really seeing the normal deluge of bills. I mean, there's still a fair number here, but, you know, if you sit down and compare it to the legislative memo that we did last session, you'll see this one's significantly shorter. Now, it's not to say that there won't be other bills that come down the wire that do pass into law and that do affect districts. These are the ones that really were most foremost that we kind of wanted to put on your radar. Again, I'll just run through them real quickly. HB 1410. Williamson County, along with Travis and a handful of others, have long had the authority to issue bonds for Parks and Rec. Obviously, you are a built-out, developed district, and so may not be pertinent to y'all, but what that bill would do would ultimately increase the limit on the bond issuance as to what y'all can issue for Parks and Rec. It's currently limited to 1% right now. That would actually expand that if the district meets certain thresholds as far as their debt-to-value ratio is concerned, or if they meet certain credit thresholds. SB 526, district websites and meeting places. This is really, I think Suzanne and I have counseled y'all before that we think that the legislature is ultimately going to mandate that every water district have a website, and this is pretty much the bill that will do that. Fortunately for y'all, you already have a nice functional website that has all the legislatively mandated information on there, so this won't be anything that y'all really have to spend a whole lot of time coming into compliance on, but for your friends and family who are in newer districts and whatnot, it's legislation that for them that could ultimately be helpful in just understanding how their MUD functions and how to reach those officials and whatnot. HB 3253, water district virtual meetings and ACH district disbursements. Don't ask me why those are in the same bill, other than they're both related to districts. They have a rule on germaneness of the legislature where you can't have unrelated topics in the same piece of legislation. But I guess the legislators and the parliamentarian down there decided that, hey, they both apply to districts. It's both Chapter 49 of the Water Code, so we'll go ahead and address both of these. But the one provision regarding ACH provisions really just kind of brings districts into the 21st century as far as paying your bills are concerned. So if you'll have recurring ACH disbursements, that would be authorized under this bill. The bill is also meant to essentially extend the means by which you conducted virtual meetings in response to COVID. Just as a reminder, the governor through the AG's office by mandate suspended certain provisions of the Open Meetings Act, and that's how y'all were able to meet virtually without having a quorum of your board physically present here. And so I think the bill is meant to recreate that, but the big caveat in the bill as it's in its current form is that you still have to have one director in an open meeting space, and that meeting space still has to be open to the public. So you could have 4 directors scattered across the world, but if you still have to have one director in a place that's open to the public. So I'm not sure if it's much of a fix, but stay tuned on that. HB 2683, this is related to virtual meetings as well, but the big takeaway on this one is that if enacted in its current form, the legislation would require us to post on agendas which items you're going to go into executive session on ahead of time. As you're aware, your agendas always have a notice at the bottom that the board can adjourn into executive session on any item on the agenda. That's been the law for certainly before my time practicing. It's just standard practice. But with this legislation, you would have to actually identify which items you're going to executive session on, which most of the time you kind of know ahead of time. And if there's litigation and whatnot, it stands to reason you're probably going to need to discuss that in executive session. If there's a contract matter. But if you cannot reasonably foresee that you're going to need to go into executive session on that item, then you may not have the opportunity to select that, to mark that out on your agenda. Hey, we're going to executive session on that. So if you cannot reasonably foresee that that's going to happen, the board would have to make a finding in open session, that it was not reasonably foreseeable at the time the agenda was drafted, and therefore we are going to go into executive session because at that time we didn't know that we were going to have to go into executive session. Did I say executive session enough times? Reasonably foreseeable enough times? Okay, moving right along. HB 2723 would basically just create a statewide website listing all the truth in taxation websites, just kind of one-stop shopping for taxpayers. Let's see, HB 768 would require any political subdivision in a county that has a population of 5,000 or more to make an audio or video recording of your public meetings. SB 3, this is the omnibus legislation that the legislature put forward in response to Winter Storm Uri. It's a big bill, but the big takeaway right now is that essentially it would prohibit utilities, water utilities and other utilities from entering into collections during a state of emergency, and it also lays out some penalties that the state could assess against those utilities up to $1 million per day. Last time I reviewed it and last time I heard any scuttlebutt on this legislation, they were still trying to hammer out how to define a weather emergency. It was very, very broad last time I looked at it. So again, another one to stay tuned on. HJR 141. So a House joint resolution or a Senate joint resolution is legislation that's meant to give voters the opportunity to amend the state constitution. So that's why you see HJR instead of HB or SB. But what that bill would do would amend the constitution, if voters approve it, to allow all political subdivisions that have taxing authority to cap what the property valuation would be on individual residences. Right now, I think it's limited to cities, counties, and I think schools and community colleges. And if you go look at the legislation, they've struck out each of those entities and just put political subdivision. So essentially, we give water districts the same authority to put those caps in place, or institute a tax freeze. You give the same authority that those other taxing entities have. And then finally, we saved the best for last, HB 1118. It would revise the cybersecurity training that we were talking about earlier. And if adopted in its present form, you would only be required to take that annual training if you are an elected official or an employee of a governmental entity that spends 25% of your official duties using a government computer. So board members typically, I mean, unless you are going home and doing a lot of district business on a district laptop, you would essentially be exempt from the training going forward. But this year, you are not exempt. You're still required to get that in. So that's all I have. Actually, and Mr. Smith actually commented on, I just wanted to comment on HB 3367. It's a piece of legislation that is meant to amend some of the laws that regulate property owners associations. And one of the big rubs that I've identified and what Mr. Smith's email, the comment of it was, it's basically prohibiting members of an ACC from serving on a board and vice versa, the HOA board. So if you've got 5 people that sit on your HOA board, neither they, their spouses, or anybody that reside in their home could also serve on the ACC, and vice versa. So that's one of the big takeaways for that board. But that bill is specific to property owners associations, so it wouldn't really apply to water districts that do deed restriction enforcement as drafted. So I always try to really hammer home the as drafted caveat, because legislation does change very dramatically in these last weeks. There's a lot of compromising handshake deals that go on, and that's how legislation gets passed, unfortunately, for better or worse. Again, we'll provide you in this end of session memorandum with bills that actually do get passed, and we'll keep you apprised.
No, thanks for the comment on that.
Yes, sir. It was, yeah, and I think we always struggle to decide what exactly we should be briefing on and which shouldn't, because it's really easy. There's a little district business reaches out in so many different ways. Sometimes it's really hard to parse it down to what's really specific to districts, but that was one of the reasons for that omission. So, but I did read the bill though. As someone who lives in a HOA, I was quite interested in it too. So
I'm glad it could be useful.
Which House bill is the one that is going to mandate MUDs have a website?
Let's see, that was SB 526. Yes, ma'am.
526?
Yes, ma'am.
There's been a form of that for already, but I guess they're gonna, even the tiny little MUDs or brand new MUDs, they're reaching out and making sure they have them.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, it's weird, cause I did, when I was doing some research, I saw several MUDs that don't have websites.
No.
Yeah, so it's, you know, they're saying, as of right now, again, as drafted, it's capturing districts of, 500 or more, and I think there's a couple of other small qualifications on there, but by and large, it's gonna capture pretty much any district that's, you know, beyond the very initial stages of development.
All right, thank you for that update.
Yes, sir.
Next meeting date, June 8th, everyone good?
Oh,
No schoolwork to worry about for anybody?
I'm
All right.
having total knee replacement tomorrow, so depending on my
Good luck.
progress,
Good luck with that.
thank you.
Wish you the best.
I'll try to get here.
Future agenda items, homestead exemption, keep that on. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Are y'all a member of AWPD?
we are.
Zach would like to tell you something.
Uh-oh.
Maybe
I
Suzanne
have,
would
I have
like
to promote him.
Oh, Zach.
There's an opening on the AWBD Board of Trustees for the Central Texas region, and I've thrown my hat in the ring. Obviously, AWBD provides a lot of support to districts across the state. The incumbent resigned not too terribly long ago. His term was up anyway, but if y'all are inclined to submit a vote in support of your humble attorney, I'd be grateful. I'll try to go up there and not embarrass us.
Thank you, Suzanne.
I have a motion to adjourn from Director Tiber, second. Second by Director Barnes, all in favor? All right, it is 7:05, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.